Welcome to the first episode of Reform the LA Way with Los Angeles Unified School District Board President Monica Garcia. I'm Jorge Briceño, Director of Instructional Television, and this is a program for all the stakeholders of the district. It's an opportunity to be better informed of the progress being made to reform education and provide the best schooling for our students. We'll be joined later in our program by former Congressman Esteban Torres, but first, Monica, this episode is all about reform taking place in LA Unified and how it's being achieved. And you've served now as board president for 4 years. And so the question I have for you is, what drives you as an educator and as a reformer?
So I'll say two things. One, I know education changed my life. I know when I got to UC Berkeley and I understood that reading and writing was a gift and not everyone had it, I really appreciated that I had academic skills. Number two, when I came to LAUSD and I saw 50% graduation, I knew that we could change that. I knew that all families want their children to be graduates. I knew that all employees come to the district to make sure we experience success. So my target was, let's change that 50%. What has to happen so that all kids who come to the district get to be graduates, college ready, and career prepared?
Now, as board president, folks may not know, but that's a peer elected position. Your peers have put their trust and their faith in you as the leader. Today, what would you say is the accomplishment that you're most proud of as board president?
You know, I think I'm most proud that it is not just the board, just the superintendent, just one community-based organization, but there is a civic community focused on helping schools serve children better. So I think we've dealt with the belief system change. We're not talking anymore about what is our dropout rate. We all know we have to help every student be successful, and that means everyone has to get involved.
We all know with 670 plus thousand students, that's not an easy task. So the flip side of that question is, where do you feel that you still, as board president, have a long way to go? What goal do you still think needs a lot of that effort, that passion that you're talking about?
I think we got to get to all the kids. So while we see pockets of success and some things that are making a difference for these 500 kids, our scope and scale at LAUSD is always the challenge. How do we get to everyone? We're bigger than 27 states. We're the second largest school district in the country. We have to make sure that every neighborhood has quality education, because what we're talking about is the Los Angeles of next 10 years, the California of the next 20 years, the United States. So we know we're doing things every day that make an impact throughout this country. And we know that we haven't gotten to every school and every classroom and every student. And that's the piece. I always say I represent the children that we serve very well, and I represent the children that we haven't served well. So until we get to everyone, I think everyone should be working with urgency, focus, commitment. There's a lot to do.
And I think that's a perfect segue to Reform the LA Way. Why don't you tell us briefly what you see as Reform the LA Way?
So I definitely think this belief system change that says we're responsible and accountable to 100% of our children leads us to the mission of 100% graduation. And that means college ready, career prepared. And as the nation talks about how will urban schools reform themselves, we hear a lot about one reform or another reform. The LA way means everyone gets involved. It means we're moving away from one size fits all to creating different solutions. Maybe magnet schools serve this community well. Maybe pilot schools with thin contract, teacher-led, 500 seat schools. Maybe small schools in a campus, one campus with 5 small schools. Maybe it is a traditional comprehensive school. But what I want to see is different models of success.
But let me jump right in there because you mentioned pilot schools, and we talked a little bit off camera about pilot schools, and personally I think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I talk to people about it, and they're like, pilot what? That's just another charter effort trying to take away our schools. Will you please definitively tell us what pilot schools are and who initiated that movement?
Sure. Thanks to Superintendent Richard Alonso, almost 8 years back, he started talking with the folks in Boston. What was happening? Roy Romer called on the superintendents to deal with program improvement schools, PI5 schools. Belmont was one of them. Richard Alonso starts looking across the country, what's working. In Boston, there are pilot schools. What does that mean? Small schools of 500 or less, teacher-led with thin contracts, meaning they're not going to get stuck on all the rules of the traditional school. They're going to focus on autonomy, on the election to work, which means staff has to work together, and is it working every year, committing to the goal. So we started the Belmont Pilot Network. That was 10 schools authorized by LAUSD and UTLA. Today, we have an agreement of 30. Pilot schools are UTLA members who have come together for an alternative governance model that includes families and community. And what we're seeing in the Belmont used to be 5,500 kids on one campus. Now we have smaller schools and they're doing different things. And what we need to know, Jorge, we didn't change the kids. They're the same kids with a different model, and we're experiencing more success.
And along that line, one thing that you mentioned to me when we were talking briefly was that we didn't swap out the staff for the administration either. These are our folks doing this.
That's right. Esther Solomon at LASA over at the Kennedy School will tell you she was part of the original design team for the Belmont Learning Center, and she was let down over and over. And then finally she said, I will be a teacher leader, a principal in the Los Angeles High School for the Arts. And her 500 kids are experiencing tremendous success.
I've seen it firsthand, and I think that's why I think it's one of the greatest things that I've seen in terms of the educational reform, but was surprised, why aren't more people aware of it? So not to get too drowned out of the what's stopping it, but what exactly is the obstacle to getting pilots to be broader accepted or to be better known?
Well, we have an invitation out to our teachers union and our principals union. Let's lift the caps. We agreed to 10. Let's figure it out. Does it work? What we're really seeing is this is an alternative to charter only. This is in-district reform. This is 100% LAUSD created. How do we transform our large schools? So I like the thin contract. I like the election to work. I've heard from many teachers in public school choice. We're seeing more people say, hey, I want to be a pilot too. The thing is, we call them the Belmont Pilots, and LAUSD has multiple pilots. So what is that? So our reform contract, our autonomies that we know make a difference to kids in schools, these are the things that are wrapped up in the pilot schools.
Now, let me go back a little bit. You were talking about Reform the LA Way. We're talking about the various measures that are going into this reform. And I know in some of the material that I read, there were 5 particular items that were being addressed or looked at to measure this reform. There was instruction, facilities, leadership, budget, and labor relations. And I'd like to ask you something, but first I'm going to set up a quote that I just recently saw from you, where you were talking about great teachers are part of the formula for achieving 100% graduation. And that quote was attributed to you in response to a recent award for Michael Sabin at Virgil Middle School, social studies teacher. So we've talked a little bit about teachers. Can you tell us a little bit more about the other 4 components that go into this Reform LA Way?
Sure. So facilities, small, 500 kids. Autonomies, schools want to be able to select the people who work at them. They don't just want to be assigned through the district. Governance, it means not just Beaudry telling people what to do, but it means coming around a table and talking about what works. When you go to Miguel Contreras and sit with the Academic Leadership Institute, the academic leadership community, it's students and teachers and their administrator, their principal also teaches, and they sit there and they brainstorm. What do our kids need? How do we get it to them? They deal with budget cuts. They don't have everything they want, but they're creating an experience for those students, which includes community service, that includes leadership development, that includes project-based learning. So some of these elements of autonomy, whether it's staffing or instruction, it's basically LAUSD relaxing that mandate from Central and really giving people the autonomy which comes with the accountability. So we have an understanding with these schools that their governance structure is different. And what it really means is starting where the client is. I'm a social worker by training. They tell you, here's the way to success. Start by knowing who's in the classroom. Start by knowing what's needed here. Not big LAUSD of 700,000 kids, but at the academic leadership community where those 500 kids get the attention of every adult on the campus.
Let me ask a little follow-up here regarding accountability. You mentioned that's one of the tenets. We have to look at the accountability issue. Speak a little bit about the parent and school report card that I believe was obviously one of the efforts that you spearheaded. Tell us about how that's going, how it's being received, and where do you see it going?
So one of the best things I've ever done in my life is hire Ramon Cortines to be our superintendent. And when he was the deputy mayor, for the Partnership for LA Schools, he said, we're going to have a report card. And then when he came to be deputy superintendent, he said, this is going to be for all of LAUSD. What the report card is, it's a way to put together the information we have about a school with arrows. Are we going in the right way? Are we measuring attendance for students and staff? Are grades for the CST, the attitudes that people feel, do they feel welcomed at our school? All of those, the report card is a yearly report to all of our parents, a yearly report to all of our community groups. How are we doing? And then that report card is a conversation tool.
And that's my next question. How is it being received? Is it one of those things like when, my report card didn't look that good, I didn't necessarily want to share it? Or is it something that the community is welcoming, and as you said, it starts the conversation?
Well, there's, like everything at LAUSD, there were a lot of opinions about how it could be better and how it can be used. What we know today is we have made a commitment to be transparent, to be partners with parents, and the parents welcome it. The parents want to see more of it. The parents want to also understand it, but a lot of the times we haven't yet committed the time to have a discussion about the report card. But the report card was released maybe 2 weeks ago. And what it does, it starts creating conversations. What does this mean? What does it mean that for English language learners, we have not had the growth we need? What does it mean that for math, we've gone up more than we have in English? What does it mean that all of our teachers have really great attendance, right? So conversations. The report card is about our commitment to be transparent. Can we add more things to the report card? Absolutely. There's been 3 iterations now, and we're always getting feedback on how to make it parent friendly. It is, though, best in nation.
Well, let me just ask sort of this question where I know it has to be addressed. We talked about budget as one of the items that's going to measure accountability, or is going to be part of the Reform the LA Way. You've got to look at budget. This is a challenging climate.
Yeah.
How are things being accomplished given the challenges that we're facing from Sacramento and from federal government?
Yeah. So 1, none of the cuts are good cuts. 2, California has taken money from schools almost all of our lives. We're 42 years old, you and I. We know that we have to do more. So here's the news. We're not getting any more money anytime soon. So with the money we have to figure out how to get greater achievement. It's that simple. The kindergarteners in our class aren't going to get a pass when they apply to Cal. No one's going to say, were you part of the Great Recession of 2010? It is about the kids coming to our schools deserve the absolute best. So dollars are shrinking. We have to do more with less, and it's not fair. And it does make all of us very angry. So pilot schools don't get more. They just get choices about what to do with their dollars. Autonomy, how to spend the money is a very good conversation. We have to use that report card. We have to talk with the teachers and the parents. What can we do to make sure that our kids do better next year? And it is about local control. And that's why we support budgeting for student achievement, because we already know we can't